Thanks for joining us for this episode of Coffee with Closers, where business leaders share insights on how to build businesses from the ground up and best practices for innovating in their industry.
Jacob, appreciate the opportunity to interview you today.
Definitely. Thanks for chatting with me.
Yeah, most certainly. Well, for the audience that don't know about you, can you share a little bit about who you are?
Sure. I'm head of content marketing at G2, just rebranded from G2 Crowd. G2 Crowd, we started as a software review site, so people would come in, review the CRM, the marketing automation, the accounting tools that they use in their own businesses. From here, our company dream, maybe when our founders started 6 years ago, has expanded a little bit. So not just software reviews, but we actually want to be the company that helps you manage the software, helps you select the software, that's the reviews. And then in the near future, I think sometime in 2019, we'll actually be purchasing software directly from our site. So we're trying to create that entire business software lifecycle, but started as a business software review site.
Most certainly. I remember this was just an idea when I met Godard and Matt, I think like 6-7 years ago, where they were talking about this whole concept. And now it's a reality, and you raised over $100 million, right?
Yeah, we got our Series B in the last, or Series C in the last 6 months, up to $100 million. When I started, it's about 3.5 years ago. I started the Monday after they had just raised that Series A, $5 million, and they were so excited. I think it was person number 31 hired, and so the difference from there to here is pretty significant.
Pretty crazy, yeah. So the people, like obviously someone who has been hiding under the rock for the last 6 years may never have heard of G2, but this is a phenomenon that's taking place in the marketplace. Talk to our audience about what is the part a site like G2 has in the marketing landscape.
Totally. So, I think it goes back to why we were founded by, Godard, Tim, Matt, all those guys. Like they came in, they had worked at, Steelwork, they had big machines. They'd seen that there was kind of a hole in the industry. So with software, if you weren't a big player and you weren't on the grids for Gartner or Forrester, if the analysts didn't recommend you and you weren't paying to be on those, you couldn't be found by somebody looking to solve a business problem through software. So how do they get some voice for the smaller companies that might have a better solution but don't have massive, billion-dollar revenue, don't have the marketing budgets of someone like Oracle? Allow the customers to review you, allow them to give their opinion, get feedback from real people. Just a much different way of buying business software for somebody who was in the industry 10 years ago and knew only analysts, only sales reps. I think that's the idea of the company and where G2 fits in now. Again, going to when I started 3-4 years ago, we would have these at our all hands. This little section was like tales from the crowd, and anybody who had even had a conversation with someone who had heard of G2 was like a big deal. And now, man, going to a wedding, going to just a happy hour or whatever, and you start to do or Yelp for business software. Oh, you're G2, I use you guys every month. I bought, this tool, reading your reviews, I've seen your reports. So instead of, we've kind of at least fit into the sales cycle, sales reps telling us, we use your reviews to sell now rather than them just giving their own sales pitches.
Most certainly, and I think people can relate to this. Like you said, Yelp for business, but essentially, in the entire buying process, where does review or social proof falls into that equation? When does that even become an important factor?
Yeah, it definitely depends on the type of software. An ERP is different from a survey software. The process just much different, but definitely early in the education, we've seen. I don't have the stats offhand, but most people look at reviews before they even want to talk to a sales rep. So you've already identified a problem that you have in business. Again, I need to send surveys, or I need help with my accounting, or I need to automate my payroll. So you know what you need. Then you're coming in to look for some options. And then when you're reading reviews is usually when you're nailing down to 5 or 4 or 3 different options, and you want to actually get opinions from people, get some data from real users. And so you're already pretty deep into the research process when you're reading reviews.
And so when you think about the buyer's journey, awareness, consideration, decision stage, so it's in that consideration stages when they're starting to figure out which option is by far the best. So what can marketers do proactively to make sure that they are setting themselves up for success? Because customers aren't just taking your word for you or for it anymore, right? They have options. They can go look in multiple different places. They have so many more choices. I think the MarTech the software review, what is that website, MarkTech?
Advisors.
Yeah, Advisors. I think they list all the top, just the marketing softwares alone. They started with about a couple of hundred, and now they're into the tens and thousands of them are there. So obviously there's a lot of options. So what are some of the things the marketers need to think about just to make sure that they're being found?
Totally. It was I think that's a great point of how that explosion of SaaS. There's so many options. Even if you just think of CRM or marketing automation, there's literally hundreds of both of those. And so what's going to fit your company? The buyer doesn't necessarily know. So as a marketer, what can you do to set yourself apart? Obviously, we're a little bit biased, but the reviews aren't, and you can do a really good job of being proactive and getting reviews, getting your best customers to offer opinions, and finding people at different points in their use, in their process of using your software. People who are early adopters or people who have just taken on your software, getting their opinions and feedback, super valuable, and getting constant feedback, not just getting 30 reviews one day and forgetting about it. People look at the newness, the freshness of those reviews, and they really care there. I think that's super important, obviously. And then also not hiding from bad reviews. Not every single company, no company has perfect reviews, and if you do, it's suspicious. So allow for those bad reviews to take place, respond to them. We offer directly on our platform the ability for a vendor to engage with the reviewer. Super helpful, very transparent. That's why people go to reviews. They want to see what this product's really like. They want to see what the company is really like. So allow them to see what you're like. You're going to offer great customer support. You're going to hear their feedback, acknowledge it, and let them know what the timeline is to fix that. That's the best way to use those reviews and actually be proactive and show your customers or potential customers what you're really like.
Yeah, I think it's almost a temperature check as well, right? So it's not just on the sales side, it's also on the back office customer service side, and also on the product side. They can look at the feature feedback that the actual real customers have. And I think it's an important factor that I didn't even think about, because I think most of the time we're so much worried about selling and not necessarily worried about adoption and how well are these platform features are being used. And then customers are pretty frank when they're commenting on these things.
Definitely.
And I know for a fact, when it comes to Salesforce or CRM usage and things of that nature, there are a lot of features that we never even touch. But then product team spends way too much time worried about certain features that may or may not even be used, and then figuring out how do you make those things to stick, right? And then if they don't adapt well, then there's a retention problem that comes into conversation when it's renewal time, because if people aren't using all the features of a product, then they're going to say this isn't really what I don't want to be paying for features that I don't necessarily use.
Totally. I think also, again, when we go back to why the company was founded, it was thought about as a marketing and play. But the product aspect, that is something we didn't anticipate. I think that's what happens with a lot of SaaS companies. You build a feature thinking everybody's going to adopt it, it's going to be the best thing in the world, and it falls flat, right? So you have to know how to change that or get the adoption. Other times you didn't even know you created, or you had a feature and people are using it completely differently than you expected. That's not a bad thing, but you might not know unless you're getting that feedback, especially in real time, that you can adapt what you're doing, change your roadmap if necessary. Those type of things you can get directly from that feedback and have really good takeaways and just make a much better product, be way more in touch with your customers.
So today marketers are, they have to worry about not just doing a good job in marketing themselves on their own web properties. They have to think about places like G2 where they can make sure their brand is getting the proper recognition in that place. So reputation becoming a big aspect of, digital reputation is a big aspect of the marketing as a whole. And I know you have a lot of experience in the content marketing side. So from your experience and obviously working in this essentially is a big publication, right? G2 is a massive publication. What are some of the lessons you've learned being in a content marketing, being in the content marketing space?
Man, tons of lessons. So I've been in a few different roles here. I've been in a research-focused role where content was part of the job, but the research was the main aspect. And now I've shifted to our marketing team, so it's content first. Still with the focus, I'm still understanding and aware of where the research is, but thinking about the content and the traffic a little bit more directly. Some lessons over the last 4 years. The biggest thing that I think from mistakes that we've learned from is not quantifying things or not working towards the correct goals. I remember one half that we had where we had a specific publishing count. Like that was our goal, publish 600 blogs, and it sounds lofty and like some success will happen from that. But if you don't have the correct goals, which would be traffic or MQLs or whatever it should be for your company, then it falls flat. So we wrote 500 blogs. Most of them didn't have the results we would have wanted. You know, we now write 500 blogs and we can turn that into 1 million organic traffic. We turned 500 blogs into 10,000, like because we weren't focused on the right goals. That was super important. Like that was a big learn for our company, not just doing something because you're told you're supposed to be doing something. You asked before this started, are we doing video? And I think a lot of companies say we have to do video because everyone's doing video, but if you don't get results and you're not tracking the right metrics, you're not pushing for the right things, what's the point? So knowing what you're supposed to track, that's huge. Using data in everything you do, knowing the life cycle of the buyer's journey and how people actually use your site, where they go when they come to a landing page or interact with a form or something, like mapping that out and not just making assumptions, but actually tracking with data. I just can't stop saying data because it's so important. It's something that we've just evolved here at G2 and have been really smart at in the last couple of years.
What are some of the mistakes you've seen, marketers making in general when they're talking about content marketing, or at least when they say they're executing content marketing?
Yeah, for sure. There's a couple that really stand out to me. One is just saying, again, we need to do content marketing. So they hire a couple writers. There's not a lot of direction or the wrong metrics or whatever, and just not investing in it enough. If you're not a huge domain and you're targeting the wrong keywords or something, you just won't have success, and then people don't understand why it's not working, right? So that's one. Two, with content marketing, this is more for maybe upper, like leadership above the content, or people, stakeholders, investors, whatever, but content marketing takes time, right? Like my team just published 400 articles in the last quarter. None of that has gotten traffic yet. So that's all stuff that we'll see the dividends, like the payoff will be in 3 to 6 months, sometimes even a year and a half. So giving some runway and like having proper expectations, not changing course the second, there's no traffic or no MQLs or whatever it is. Like content's a long-term play, right? So that's a mistake I've seen. And then from like the actual content creators, the number of like teams I worked with or talked to that are so focused on things that seem important but don't impact, like for us, switching to keywords and getting those right and mapping our articles and our plans and our strategy was much more important than maybe getting our blog homepage designed correctly or having a custom image on everything. Of course I want a custom image on every single article, but though I don't love using a stock image, like the amount of time and resource to get those custom images, is it going to be worth your time? Is the blog layout the most important thing? Or changing the blog layout without knowing how people are using your blog? I think it's just not using data and using like your instincts and what feels right. That doesn't work. I think a lot of people's content falls flat because of that.
Yeah, I think perfection is the enemy of good. Sometimes you're holding off a piece from publishing because you're like, oh, I can't find the right image, or I'm not happy with the sentence structure. But it's not like someone is going to critique every sentence on a blog, because what they're really looking for is information. And we were talking earlier, more and more people are probably starting to listen to some of this content. They're not even necessarily reading every piece of content.
100%.
They're looking for ease of read and looking for those nuggets of wisdom they can find in a quick minute, as opposed to reading 4,000 words. And I know we're writing for the search engines at the end of the day. We want the search engines to find it, but at the end of the day, we want to be useful for the audience that we're trying to target. And they don't have a lot of time, right? So where do you see content going in the future? Like we were just talking about, where more and more podcasts are coming back into the market. There's tons of content in podcasts, video.
I definitely think it has a place, and I hope so. G2 invested a ton in this writing team. We have 20 talented writers producing content every single day. So if we didn't think it had a place and was super valuable, we obviously wouldn't be doing it. But that being said, there's so much content out there. Everybody's writing. Everybody has a content marketing team. Even if they don't know how to do it, there's people out there for every niche, every industry. So it's more competitive. Google itself is kind of making the search results smaller and smaller. They're suggesting a lot of things, keeping you in the Google ecosystem. So it's even harder to own top spots because Google's taking them for itself. There's video, like you said, you watch video. if I'm on the train in the morning, everybody's watching something. There's a lot fewer people reading, and if they're scrolling, it's on Instagram or something very quick. What I'm seeing is the one article to cover a ton of topics, those pillar pages. Sometimes there's a place, but more often than not, it's about really hyper-focusing, getting super detailed, those long tail, deep dives, and like being a super expert on a small, specific topic. That's where it matters more. But also knowing the format, like if we write an article that would be better suited for a video, someone's gonna make that video and they're gonna own the top spots, and Google rewards them because people wanna watch rather than read. There are some topics that you definitely need those written how-tos, like the very much step-by-steps or the really detailed guides.
Like everyone is a publisher today, right? People are creating content. And in the past, it was just maybe a couple of magazines or an industry publication. That was pretty much where you would find information around a subject or a topic. In the probably last in the 10 years or so, everybody's blogging, everybody's creating a ton of content. Everyone become a publisher. So it's not enough to create content anymore. You got to figure out how do you get eyeballs on it. So where does content production, and where does content, like how do you plan your content promotion strategy, and what do you need to do to make sure that your content is getting found and actually being consumed?
Definitely, and I'm pretty blessed at G2 that the company is 6 years old. Our domain's really solid. We already have a lot of traffic, and our authority is in certain areas. So if we write about software, generally speaking, we'll be seen by Google. We're super fortunate. Not everyone's that way, but even now we're trying to break into new areas where we won't be found by Google if we just write a piece and forget about it. So, we do things like social, individual writers are using our company accounts, but even that's enough. Paid social, getting people to things, content, curation. But the biggest one that we've had is definitely just creating real relationships with people, sending it to experts for feedback, trying to get them to want to be featured in a piece. If, I don't know, we do that. We do a lot of link building, but not just for link's sake. We actually want links to be showing that we're a credible expert. We want to be providing value beyond what other articles are doing. I think that to the point of how you can set yourself apart, that's one thing, is finding what other articles don't do and then producing better content. And then again, promoting, getting it in the hands of people that can actually find it useful. If you don't do any promotion, your content's just going to fall flat. And that's a big mistake that we've had in the past too. And I'm glad that we're devoting resources and time to doing that right now.
Yeah, like you said, content is a long game. It's not something where you can have a quick success and be happy about it. And sometimes you might have a quick win because there was a topic that was pretty highly searched and you were the first mover and you got that piece to rank and you got a surplus of visitors in a short time period. But if you really need that content pieces to perform over time, you gotta spend energy and sometimes dollars to promote it to get as many eyeballs as possible. And then as far as like marketers that are thinking about getting into the content marketing space, what are some advice that you can provide for them in making sure that they actually hit the road running successfully?
Definitely. I mean, as we expanded a team, I brought on a lot of people, and we hired people with way different backgrounds, but there were some things that everybody needed, right? Like we wanted people who could write. Obviously, it's a very clear number one thing. If you can't write and edit, really not the field for you. But some pieces of content, some really good content people aren't the best grammar people or the best punctuation people, and that's okay. But they're good at telling a very clean story. I think that clean, usable, readable, that's more important sometimes than just being a wordsmith and really, really crafty with sentence structure or something. Thinking, being able to put yourself into multiple personas or the personas that your company really cares about, that's so important. Because if you're writing to a certain keyword or to a certain topic and you just completely miss on who's searching for it, you don't have an understanding of that user intent, again, just going to fall flat. We've done that before too. We think what the audience is going to be, and Google tells us it's something completely different. We wrote the wrong piece. And the number, this is this intangible thing that you can't really measure, but just wanting to learn, always investigating. I'm a journalist by trade. I was taught this in J school, but just being creative. Every single piece of, I'm sure you're this way, digesting a ton of content, but every podcast, every article I'm reading, I'm looking for a way to turn that into content that we can do here at G2. Seeing what people are doing. Why is this CTA here? What are they? I've never seen a header like this. This image is crazy. What about this? how can we turn that into something like that never-ending like curiosity and wanting to replicate and just do better? That's something that the most successful people I've seen do that all the time, and they never turn their brain off fully. And that's what I would tell somebody. And it's hard to do, but if you practice enough and train your brain, it can be really useful.
And not afraid to experiment things too. Like, I think that's the biggest mistake people make. And now part of the trend that I've been seeing is like making the same form of content and repurposed in multiple different ways, right? You can have a blog and then have a written, have a video that goes along with it, kind of summarizes the topic and give you just the nuggets of wisdom that you need to grab from it, and then maybe even turning that into more like a SoundCloud audio file and then embed that as well. And Google liked those things because of the fact that people are spending more time on that content piece, then gives the signal to Google that, hey, this is a site that produces good quality content, people actually consume it, and they're not just bouncing right off of that page.
Totally.
Any parting wisdom for our audience?
I think that's a really important one. Find people where they are. If you're really good at writing, you're still missing a huge section of your audience. I know that right now we're still behind the times on video, so we need to find people there because not everybody's writing. But to go back to the G2 and just that overall review mentality, like, we're a company that we built around building transparency for business software, right? And maybe whether it's reviews or just interacting with customers, we've been seeing this shift to transparency overall, being better with customer service, telling people exactly when they can expect new features, giving feedback, and not hiding behind this corporate, like behind your corporation, behind your logo, but actually like turning it into more of a humanizing experience, really interacting with your customers and giving them the attention, like, no matter the size of the customer, because you don't know who's going to be the biggest advocate you'll ever have, and who, even the smallest customer can turn into this detractor that really harms your business. So just being human, showing them what you're doing, really being honest and transparent. I think that applies to what G2 is all about, but also it applies to tons of areas of marketing, customer service, and just the whole business culture right now.
Other trend that I've been noticing is like you said, the G2 and all these publication sites that are giving you opportunity for customers to put reviews, they have a lot more power. Their voices are being heard, right? And that access is there. But there's also another trend where more and more business leaders are actually much more approachable than in the past, where, if you look at the CEO of T-Mobile or Virgin or even Tesla, all those are companies that have the leadership team very forefront of their company and having direct access. Where do you think that trend is going for the customer?
Definitely. I think customers having more insight into, just that trend of reviews and being able to see directly into a company, into a product, and having more information. Same thing with like leadership. There's a couple parts to that, in my opinion. People want to work with companies or buy from companies that they believe in. So believing in the person, the face of the company. Like, we've seen CEOs or board members have to step down because of a decision and customers not being happy. But in the other spin, if you really believe in somebody, if you believe in the face of the company, it's a lot easier to work with them, and you want to believe in them, right? Also, again, the transparency, the same thing with reviews. These people are, you're getting more access to them. Social media has allowed this. Review sites has allowed this. I think people just want to know more. They have access to a lot more information than ever before, and so leadership at these big companies or any size company have really fallen in line there, and that's been important. I think it'll only continue. I can't see C-level people ever going behind the curtain again. Even to the biggest companies, you just have to be on stage. You have to be at your conferences. You have to be able to take a call when someone needs you. But we just didn't see that in the past, but now it's here and probably here to stay, I think.
Thanks again, Jacob. Appreciate the opportunity to interview you.
Definitely. Appreciate the chat.
This episode of Coffee with Closers is brought to you by One IMS, a leading digital marketing agency helping businesses win new customers. To request a free marketing ROI audit, please visit oneims.com. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. To make sure you never miss an episode, please subscribe.